Okay, let's see if we can make this work today and see if we can get a video done and get you guys moving on some more inverse operations with algebraic writing. So today we're going to be focusing on consecutive integers and clearing fractions. So hopefully you're pretty good at solving equations, combining like terms and stuff, and thinking about inverse operations at this point. We are going to look at, to start with today, just a quick review on odd integers, even integers, and consecutive integers, and then how those play into equations. Okay, so to start with, I want you to think about what an odd integer is. So odds, we know, are 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. And we know even is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. So all of these, no matter whether I'm looking at odds or evens, to go from one to the other is plus 2. Everyone jumps by 2. Now, consecutive means in order. Okay, consecutive means in order. So if I'm looking at consecutive integers, that means I'm starting with 1. I'm going to 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Okay, and to drop from 1 to the next is actually plus 1. So those are important things for us to think about, because what we're going to see is we're going to see problems like these. So it says we're supposed to find 3 consecutive odd integers with a sum of negative 51. So I know sum means add. Okay, I know sum means add. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a little bit more writing space here. And let's say that we start with the odd integer of 11. Well, the next integer would be 13, then 15, then 17, etc. So if this is x, okay, 11 is x. How do I go from 11 to 13? Well, that's plus 2. So the expression to go from here to here is x plus 2, because I started with x, I went 2 more, so x plus 2. How do I then go from 1 to 15? Well, that's plus 4. So the next one would be x plus 4, because I'm going from x and I'm skipping 2. And the next one, again, would be x plus 6, because I know I'm going from 11 to 17. That would be plus 6. And that could keep going. Now, that's the same thing if it's even, because 2, 4, 6, 8 is plus 2, plus 4, plus 6. Okay? It's going to jump if I'm starting, if I need to keep going. So let's think about what this is asking me to do. So the first 3 integers, so the first one is always going to be x. Okay, that's my first one. To get to my second, we're going to jump from x to x plus 2. And my third is going to be x plus 4. Okay, third one's going to be x plus 4. So my equation is x plus 2, and x plus 4, and that equals a negative 51. So now looking at this, I can see a couple different things here. I can see there's lots of terms over here on the left, and I want to combine like terms. So I have 3 x's and I have a 6, and that's a negative 51. So solving this, if I subtract my 6, I have negative 57. And if I divide that by 3, I'm going to come up with negative 57 divided by 3 is negative 19. Okay, so now here's what I have to realize. This is only one answer. It wants 3 answers. So x equals negative 19 is actually this one. So how am I going to go to get the next 2? Well, it says I have to add 2. So negative 19 plus 2 is going to give me a negative 17. And then if I go 2 more, it's going to give me a negative 15. So there are my 3 answers: negative 15, negative 17, and negative 19. So the 3 numbers that are going to add to come up with negative 51. And I'm sure that some of you could actually guess and check and get there, but that's just not your most efficient way to solve equations. Okay, let's look at the next one. Find 3 consecutive integers. So let's say we start with 7. And I'm going to go to 8, and I'm going to go to 9. So from here to here is plus 1, and from here to here is plus 2. So if I think about what my first, second, and third integers are, remember, we always start with x. So x, the first step is going to be x plus 1. Second step is going to be x plus 2. So if I put these together, how many x's do I have? I have 3 x's. 1 plus 2 is going to give me 3, and that equals a sum of 21. Well, this one's pretty easy to solve. Minus 3, 3x equals 18, and x equals 6. So there's my first number. So it says we want 3 again. So if this is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7, 6 plus 2 is 8. My numbers are 6, 7, and 8. 6, 7, and 8. So this is a pretty common type of question that you're going to see on like your IO assessments, your ACT. You need to just write these formulas down, get familiar with them, mark them in your notes where you can find them. Okay, there's nothing wrong with looking them up, but you need to be able to find them. So let's go ahead and look at one more. So I want to do 4 consecutive even integers. So go ahead and hit pause and see if you can come up with your expressions for the first integer, the second integer, the third integer, and the fourth integer, and let's see if we can come up with our answer. Okay, let's see how you did. Starting with x. Remember, these are even. So even is going to hop by 2's. X plus 2, x plus 4, x plus 6. And if I'm going to go ahead and combine these vertically so I can just make it a little easier on myself, 4x, 2 and 4 is 6, 6 and 6 is 12, and it's going to equal 180. So let's go ahead and solve this. Minus 12. So 4x equals 168, and 168 divided by 4 is 42. So my first answer is 42. Now remember, I need 4 answers, so I have to keep going. 42 plus 2, 44. 42 plus 4, 46. 42 plus 6 is 48. So there are my 4 answers. Hopefully you got those right. Okay, second thing we're going to look at today is looking at clearing fractions. So as we've kind of been working on our equations, you've been told that you're not to have decimal answers unless the problem is a decimal, simply because of rounding. It causes too much of an error. But there are times where we come up with these really ugly equations with all these fractions, and we are not going to change them to decimal. Okay, what we're going to do is clear the fraction and make a very simple equation. So the way that we clear the fraction is by multiplying by the least common denominator. Okay, so let's start with 4 and 5. What would the least common denominator of 4 and 5 be? Well, for those of you who can't really remember what a least common denominator is, the way to think about that is if I count by 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, that keeps going. I'm going to count by 4s, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32. What you're looking for is the number they have in common, the first number they have in common, okay, the smallest. So the first number these guys have in common is 20, and that happens to be what 4 times 5 is. Okay, so I can always just multiply the denominators and come up with a common denominator. It may not be my least, but it will work. It's just the smaller numbers means your problem's going to have smaller things. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We found our common denominator. So the LCD is 20, okay? And we are going to multiply every piece by 20. Every piece. Every term gets multiplied by 20. Okay? So here's my thinking process. I'm going to take 3 times 20. That's 60. And I'm going to go ahead and write this out a little bit more than normal this time just so you can see where I'm going. 4 times 20 is 80. There's my 5. And 20 times 20 is 40. So right now I still have fractions. I know you're thinking, well, that didn't really do anything but make bigger numbers bigger. Well, let's go ahead and do the division. 60 divided by 4, that's 15. 80 divided by 5, that's 16. I no longer have fractions. Now I can just solve it. Well, those two, that gives me 31. And I know this is multiplication, so opposite is going to be division. X is going to equal 40 divided by 3. And that one's finished. Okay, that one's finished. All right, let's try this next one. What is my least common denominator with 3 and 5? If you thought 15, you are correct. So let's go ahead and multiply everything by 15. Now remember, this one has 3 things. 1, 2, 3, 3 terms. So everybody has to be multiplied. Now this time I'm going to go ahead and do this one in my head with kind of speaking out loud and save myself this step. I'm not going to write this step. I'm going to go directly to here. Okay, so 1 times 15. 1 times 15 is 15, divided by 5, that's a 3. 1 times 15 is 15, divided by 3, that's a 5. And 4 times 15, that's 60. And dividing by 3 is going to give me 20. Obviously, very simple equation at this point. I know that's times 3 plus 5, so minus 5 divide 3. So minus 5. 3x equals 15. Divide by 3, and x is going to equal 5. X is going to equal 5. So that wasn't so bad. You can see that the process is really about multiplying by the common denominator and then dividing by the denominator, and then they're gone. So it's really simple. Okay, so I'm going to give you a second to think about what's my common denominator of 4 and 2. Okay, so how many of you came up with 4 as your least common denominator? How many of you came up with 8? So I want you to think about the fact that this one actually has 2. Okay, it actually has 2. And it doesn't really make any difference which one I use. I just need to use a common multiple. Okay, so if I'm more comfortable just taking 2 times 4, the denominators, and using that number, that's fine. It's just going to give me bigger numbers. Now, I want you to realize this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different terms. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and multiply. I'm going to go ahead and use 8. I can use 4. I'd get exactly the same answer. I'm just going to have bigger numbers as I work through this problem. So 1 times 8 is 8, divided by 4 is 2. There's a 1 here. 1 times 8, that is an 8. Negative 3 times 8, that's a negative 24. 1 times 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, now let's take a look at this. There's some like terms right here. So that is a 10x. Now, I don't think we've seen one of these yet. So we kind of need to talk about what's going on here. So I have variables on the left and I have variables on the right. That is kind of a problem because I need to have all my variables on one side and all my numbers on the other. So what needs to happen is this guy needs to go that way. And I know that to move something across the equal sign, I always have to do the opposite. So what's the opposite of a plus 4x? Well, that would be a minus 4x. So this is gone. 10 minus 4 is 6x. And my last step here would be dividing by 6. So x would equal a negative 4. X would equal a negative 4. Okay, go ahead and hit pause and go ahead and get started on this next one and see how far you can get. All right, let's see how you did. So 3 and 4, common multiple is 12. And again, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need to multiply 4 times. It's super important that you do not leave anybody out, okay? Everybody's going to get some. Everybody gets a share. And there's a 1 here. So 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 12 is 24. 24 divided by 3 is going to give me an 8. 1 times 12 is 12. Divide by 4. That's going to give me a 3. And 1 times 12 is 12. Okay, we're down to a pretty simple problem here, except for there's variables on both sides. Can't have variables on both sides. So we're always going to move the variables first. So how do I move this 3m? Well, I know it's positive, so I'm going to subtract the 3m. 12 minus 3 is 9. Okay, if you are just getting to this point, go ahead and hit pause and finish. Okay, my thinking. Times 9, divide 9, plus 8, minus 8. So I'm going to subtract 8. So 9m equals 4. Divide by 9. M is going to equal 4 divided by 9. And that is not going to simplify because 4 is odd, 4 is even, 9 is odd, and they are not factors of each other. So that's completely done. Okay, so on your homework, you're going to be working on some consecutive integers and some fractions over the next couple days. Let's see how you do with those. Come prepared with questions if you have any problems.